Thank you, Kelly, for that. Thank you, Robert. And Robert will be available to sign books at 3 o'clock. Our next guest will also be signing books at 3 o'clock. So let me make sure that I tell you that. And kind of as a transition, because that was pretty scary stuff we just heard, we thought we would end with Brigette Gabriel, who never has anything scary to tell us about. Brigette is the founder and chairman of Act for America. She's a national security expert, writes on politics and culture. Again, there will be a book signing at 3 o'clock. Brigette, why don't you come on up? Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Okay, is everybody awake? Everybody's awake. Great. I'm so honored and delighted to be here with you. And since it's the middle of the afternoon, it's sleepy time, I'm going to start with a joke. So, a pope and a lawyer died. They go to heaven. They get to the pearly gate. St. Peter's greets them at the front door. He says, okay, welcome. You made it to heaven. Now get in the car. I'm going to drive you to your new homes for eternity. So the pope and the lawyer get in the car. St. Peter drives them there. They drop the Pope at his condo, 2-bedroom condo, little humble little thing, and the Pope gets in, he likes his new home, and then they continue to the lawyer's house. They get to the lawyer's house, you pull in the big fancy schmancy gate, the gardens, the fountain, it's a mansion, you go in, marble floors. The lawyer looks at St. Peter and he says, St. Peter, I don't understand. The Pope here, you gave him a 2-bedroom condo, and I have a mansion. What's up with that? And St. Peter looked at him and he said, oh, that's easy. We've got a few popes. You're the first lawyer. Apology to all the lawyers. Okay, are you all awake now? Good. How many lawyers we have in the room? Raise your hand. I apologize. Okay, now to the fun stuff. You know, when you talk about the Middle East, it's a very heavy subject. So you always have to keep it light. The reason why the Middle East is very heavy is because whatever happens in the Middle East doesn't stay in the Middle East. Whatever happens in the Middle East spreads across the globe. Whether it's religions, Jesus, you know who Jesus is? Where do you think he started? So whether for good or bad, the Middle East has always had such influence on the world. Unfortunately, today, we live in an environment where we are affected in our daily lives by what happens in the Middle East. And I had no less than 3 people today ask me before I came on stage, please talk about your background a little bit so people can understand a little bit more, personify the Middle East for them. So I'm going to share 2 minutes of my background. I'm passionate about the Middle East because I was born and raised there. My 9/11 happened to me in 1975 when radical Islamists blew up my home, bringing it down, burying me under the rubble wounded. I ended up in a hospital for 2.5 months. And as I laid in the hospital, going from one surgery to another, I would ask my parents, why did they do this to us? And my father would tell me, because we are Christians, the Muslims consider us infidels and they want to kill us. So I learned since I was a 10-year-old little girl that I am wanted dead simply because I was born into the Christian faith and lived in a Christian town. I left the hospital and came back home, but my home was no longer the home I left. I ended up living in a bomb shelter underground in an 8-by-10 room without electricity, without water, and very little food. And that's where I lived for the next 7 years of my life, from the age of 10 till the age of 17, robbed of my youth. I remember at the age of 13, dressing in my burial clothes, waiting to be slaughtered. And as I begged my mother, please, I don't want to die. I'm only 13 years old. And there was nothing my mother could say to me. And we sat in the corner of our bomb shelter, and my father started reading from Psalms. I shall walk into the valley of death and fear no evil, for thou art with me. And my parents said to me, when they come to slaughter us tonight, we will create a distraction. You are an only child. You are young. We are old. We want you to just run towards the Israeli border and never look back. You see, we lived 5 kilometers from the Israeli border. And we knew if we run to the Jews and beg for help, the Jews are not going to slaughter us because we had more shared values with them than we had with the Muslims. Thankfully, I didn't have to make that decision that night because that's the night when Israel came in physically into Lebanon and established the security zone and set up artillery bases around our town to keep us alive. and we stayed alive until 1982 when Israel invaded Lebanon. And Israel, the only reason Israel invaded Lebanon is because at that time we had 11 Islamic terrorist organizations operating out of Lebanon. So Israel started working with the Christians, trying to help the Christians take back their democracy and kick out the radical Islamic element that had taken control of the country at that time. That's how we came out of the bomb shelter and back to rebuilding our lives. This is why I'm so passionate about national security. I mentioned all that to you. By the way, I ended up moving to Jerusalem in 1984, working there as news anchor for World News, and from there coming to the United States in 1989. That's how I ended up in America. But the reason I mentioned my background in Lebanon to you, because that's my lead way into Iran. When Israel kicked out Yasser Arafat and his cronies out of Lebanon in 1982, working with the Christians, Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran looked at Lebanon and said, you know what? We have a majority Shiites in Lebanon. Why don't we take these 11 Islamic terrorist organizations, in our eyes terrorist, and their eyes are not, and why don't we try to combine them into one party, call it the Allah Party, Hezbollah. Hezbollah began strengthening. By 1983, in 1 year, Hezbollah attacked the Marine barracks in Lebanon, killing almost 300 Marines. And what did America do? America tucked tail between its legs and left the Middle East, sending the wrong message to our enemies, that we are no longer interested in fighting with you and standing up for what is right. Hezbollah at that time became more powerful. They started committing terrorist attacks on 4 continents across the globe. At that time, Soleimani was just starting his career with Iran. The Ayatollah became very close to Soleimani. Soleimani was appointed to lead Iran and establish the strategic expansion for Iran in the Middle East because Iran wanted to establish hegemony in the Middle East. They knew America did not want to fight. And this is why they started focusing on Lebanon by building Hezbollah, on Syria, on Iraq at that time, because the only concentration of Shiites in the Middle East are in Iraq, or across the globe, are basically Iran, Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. At that time, nobody knew anything about Soleimani. For 40 years, years, Soleimani started growing within the ranks, and nobody paid attention to him. So Soleimani became a superstar once he was able to secure remaining Assad regime in Syria, even after America wanted to get rid of Assad. So Soleimani started focusing on building the Iranian regime in Iraq, especially after we toppled Saddam Hussein, working with the Shiite, in Syria, building also the Kata'ib in Syria, the Kata'ib Hezbollah, and working with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Soleimani started growing in power and in strength. He worked on the Iran deal as well. When Trump came to power, Trump decided we do not want to have anything to do with the Iran deal. Trump pulled out of the Iran deal. Once Trump pulled out of the Iran deal, Soleimani was so upset that he went to the Ayatollah and he told the Ayatollah, I want to lead the resistance against the Americans. I want to be in charge of dealing with our policy regarding the Middle East. At that time, we did not know that Khomeini got rid of the guy who was handling the sanctions and appointed Soleimani instead. At this time, Soleimani became a superhero. He was untouchable. He was traveling like a politician between Syria and Lebanon and Iraq. And he banked on he was untouchable. He did not think that the Americans will ever attack him or do anything to him. After all, Obama didn't do anything. Bush didn't do anything. Nobody did anything. He felt he was unstoppable. But what he did not count was on President Trump outmaneuvering the Iranians by building our intelligence apparatus in the Middle East. When we killed Soleimani, President Trump has perfected our intelligence operation in 3 years, that we have not only beefed our own intelligence operation, but we knew also how to coordinate even better coordination with our allies. When we killed Soleimani, we knew exactly when he was leaving Syria, what time he was leaving, on what flight he was leaving, what he was wearing, who was accompanying him, what time he was landing in Iraq, what he was wearing, who was picking him up, how did the car look like. When we killed Soleimani, America had only 2 minutes to conduct the operation, 2 minutes to kill him. When we ended up killing him, Iran went into shock. They did not expect America to kill Soleimani. And the Iranians right now appointed a replacement to Soleimani who's 60 years old. The Ayatollah is 81 years old. The reason why they appointed somebody who's 60 years old is because Iran right now in the Revolutionary Guards, they cannot trust anybody under the age of 50. They have been infiltrated by us at all levels. The Iranian regime is collapsing from the inside. It is old. The Ayatollah does not trust anybody. The new guy does not have the charisma, does not have the excitement, does not have the personality, and does not have the relationship to keep on the relationships that he had with Nasrallah, for example, in Lebanon, with Bashar Assad in Syria. Because remember, they had taken 40 years to build a relationship with Soleimani. The new guy at 60 doesn't have the personality, nor the years, nor the time to be able to build the relationships that he has. And this is why right now when you look at the Middle East, you look at Hezbollah crumbling from the inside. Hezbollah right now is having infighting, not only because they do not have the support that they used to from Iran under Soleimani, because the new guy, they're trying to get to know each other, work together, but also because the sanction works so well that right now Iran is not flushed with money to continue supporting their operatives in Lebanon, their operatives in Syria, and neither their operatives in Iraq. And I'm speaking fast because I only have 4 minutes left. They told me, you've got only short time. Can you believe they put me in such a short time? So this is why right now what the decision that President Trump has done has ramification for decades to come. But what we learned about the Iranians out of killing Soleimani is a very important lesson. And nobody paid attention to this lesson. What we learned is that when Iran retaliated against America killing Soleimani, remember how they retaliated with the missile attack? When Iran retaliated with the missile attack, they gambled on going to war with the United States. They did not know that they're not going to kill any Americans because remember, they didn't know where the missiles are going to land. The missiles could have killed an American and we would be having a completely different discussion right now. But thankfully, no American lives were lost. But what that taught us about the Iranians is that they are willing to gamble everything, including killing their own people, because America would have obliterated Iran if they would have killed anybody. But the Iranians were willing to take that risk. That means with them having their hands on nuclear technology and trying to develop a nuclear weapon, we can never allow Iran to get to that point because they are irrational players. They are driven by messianic visions and their image of pride, of honor. In order for them to get back their pride and honor, this is why they retaliated against the American attack. They were willing to sacrifice everything for that pride and honor. So this is the type of regime that we are dealing with. And it is very dangerous and it is very scary. But I'm proud to tell you that my organization, Act for America, I'm the chairman and founder of Act for America, which is the largest premier national security organization in the country with 1.6 million members nationwide. Our focus is protecting America from all threats, foreign and domestic. I'm proud to tell you that we were able in the last 10 years to pass 6 bills on the federal level about Iran, against Iran, and 26 bills in 26 states on the state level to protect the country, and to stop people from doing business with Iran, and to tighten the sanctions on Iran. So while we don't pay attention to the Middle East and we don't pay attention to what's happening, we only pay attention when there's a terrorist attack on American soil, we at Act for America are working to keep you safe and your children safe from a regime that is this dangerous for a very, very long time. I encourage you, if you are interested in the foreign policy and in national security policy, to sign up to our emails, actforamerica.org. It's free. We send 3 in 10, 1 email a week, 3 things you can do under 10 minutes that will make a difference for the country, and you can do them sipping your cup of coffee in your pajamas at 7 o'clock in the morning. Everybody can do something. Go to actforamerica.org and sign up as an activist. actforamerica.org and sign up as an activist. We not only focus on radical Islamic terrorism, but we focus also on national security happening here in the Middle East, because under national security and keeping America safe includes designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist group, including securing our border, including kicking out the MS-13 gangs out of our country. These are the issues that we work on. And because I have very little time left, I want to touch a little bit on the Israeli-Palestinian deal. The Israeli-Palestinian deal, unfortunately, it is the best deal we presented to the Palestinians, but it is not going to fly. The Palestinians are not interested in living side by side with Israel. They are interested in wiping Israel off the map. And I can tell you one point as to why this is not going to work is because one part of the deal says that the countries that now are hosting the Palestinians, where the Palestinians are living as refugees, must remain in those countries, and these countries have to give them the citizenship. So the Palestinians who are living in Lebanon will get the Lebanese citizenship, Palestinians living in Jordan will get the Jordanian citizenship, and pink elephants will fly before that will ever happen. Because these countries will never allow that to happen. And I can tell you, as a Lebanese, Lebanon, as a Lebanese born, I no longer have the Lebanese nationality, but as a Lebanese born, the country of Lebanon will never allow to give the Palestinians nationality. So that's not going to work. Right now, since I have 1 minute left, I have to talk about my book, Rise in Defense of Judeo-Christian Values and Freedom, which will be signing in the back. I have a whole section in the book dedicated to the Middle East and what we need to do to shift from the Middle East and focus on protecting our country. At the end of every chapter, I give 3 things you can do about whatever topic. So we not only educate, but also give you input on how you can make a difference for the country. I encourage you to get it and share it with everyone you know. And I cannot end my presentation. And by the way, I'm not going to take questions because I'm going to be here for the next 2 days. Please stop and ask me any question you want about anything you can think of. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Middle East, foreign policy, national policy, Antifa, you name it. I'm here to answer questions. But I cannot end my presentation without asking all our veterans and our military members to please stand up and be recognized. I have a message for you. Remain standing after the applause. Remain standing after the applause. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Kindly remain standing. I have a message for you. I'm closing. Kindly remain standing. All our veterans and our military personnel, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for building a nation for me where I can be all I can be as an American. I want to thank you for every freedom I have, my freedom of religion, my freedom of speech, my freedom of expression. I cannot be what I am today without the sacrifices that you have made. You are not only my heroes, but you are the heroes of millions of Americans who wish they are standing before you here to thank you. But on their behalf, I thank you for your sacrifice. I thank you on behalf. I thank you on behalf of millions of people who are still living under tyranny across the world, who wish they had a military like you to come spread freedom of justice. They are unable to thank you. On their behalf, I thank you. I thank you for every sleepless night you slept. I thank you for every meal you missed. I thank you for every holiday you missed defending our country and our freedoms where we are enjoying our barbecues in our backyard. We cannot thank you enough for your sacrifice. And I promise you that I will see to it with my organization, Act for America, that we will always sing your praises, that we will always teach the new generation about the sacrifices that you have done for our country and where their freedom comes from. May God bless you one and all, and may God bless the United States of America. It's been my honor to stand before you today. God bless. Thank you.
Brigette actually always speaks that fast because she has so much and so important things to say. So thank you, Brigette, for that. Just quickly, some